This is the Canon 85mm 1.4 lens, and in this video I'm going to tell you why I love it. Stick around. I don't know if I mentioned it before, but I love shooting prime lenses, and I've always loved having the best prime lens I could have at each focal length. But one of the focal lengths that was always missing for me was 85mm. I had 50mm. Right now I have the Sigma 50mm 1.4 art lens, and I've had 135mm. I have the Canon 135mm 2.0 lens, which is one of my favorites. Having both of those, I never really found it practical to have the 85mm lens as part of my collection. There were a few good ones floating around. Canon had an 85mm 1.8, and they had the huge 85mm 1.2 lens. And it was always tempting to check that out, but for my kind of shooting, which is a lot of street shooting, a lot of things moving around, the focus was slow, and it was really kind of big and heavy to use. So I've always shied away from using that lens. Well, when it was announced by Sigma that they were going to have an 85mm 1.4 lens in their art line, I really couldn't pass up the opportunity. I've been using Sigma 35mm 1.4 lens and the Sigma 50mm 1.4 art lens for a few years now, and I love both of them. So when this new Sigma 85mm lens came around, I jumped at the chance. So I picked that one up last year and I started using it, and I really loved the focal length. I loved the lens. It was really solid, and I have nothing but good things to say about it. The images that came out of it were just amazing. So it was a lot of fun to use. But then about a year later, Canon announced that they were making an 85mm 1.4 lens with image stabilization. So I tried out a copy of the Canon lens. As far as quality goes, you're getting about the same images from the Sigma that I had to this Canon lens. Image quality is about the same. Sharpness, the color, the bokeh, everything's really very similar between these two lenses. A couple of differences are the Sigma lens was bigger and heavier than the Canon lens. It was very front heavy. It was never quite felt right with that lens. So this one is actually a little bit shorter, a little bit lighter, and a little bit more balanced. But the big thing is that the Canon 85mm 1.4 lens has image stabilization. The Sigma didn't have that. So I can actually shoot with this lens. I've taken shots as slow as 1/15 of a second handheld and gotten really great results with this lens. So for a focal length like this, to be able to shoot in really dark conditions, using a 1.4 maximum aperture and using image stabilization is really a pretty amazing thing. It's really made this lens one of my frequently used and something I always have in my bag. Because the only other lens I have with image stabilization is the 300mm 2.8 lens. It has image. So this lens is always in my bag for situations where I need image stabilization. And the focal length is really nice also. Especially for portraits, it's really nice for portraits. It's a nice framing. It doesn't distort like a longer focal length would or a shorter focal length might. If you want to get a nice close shot of somebody and blur the background, this is really perfect for something like that. So it works great in controlled studio situations. It also works really great in the situations where I use it more often, which is out in this. The focus is always fast and dead on. I never have a problem with that. Slow shutter speeds using that with this 85mm lens. I've been showing you some sample shots of what I do with this lens and photos I've taken with this lens as we go through here. I'll show you a few more at the end, but if you have an opportunity to check this out, it's definitely worthwhile. I'll put a link to it in the description below, and I'm glad I switched to the Canon. It's really changed my photography for the better. And I hope you like this video. If you do, please give it a thumbs up. If you like the kind of videos that we're doing here on this channel, definitely subscribe and click the little notification bell. This way, every time we post a new video, you'll get notified. You can check it out right away because you don't want to miss it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.